Hello and welcome back. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana, and you are watching Marksman TV. Welcome back to a gun store vlog, where today we're going to be talking again about the state of the firearms industry. I believe that demand has effectively tanked, and we're going to talk about the 5 key indicators that give me that conclusion. If that sounds interesting to you, please stick around. That's coming up now. Several months ago, I did a market analysis video discussing the 5 reasons why I believe the firearm industry was headed for a crash, and now I believe we are here and the demand for firearms has more or less bottomed out. So let's go ahead through those 5 key indicators that give me that conclusion. Number 1 is the most obvious, and that is inflation, recession, and consumer fatigue. Now, the historic definition of what a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of a decrease of GDP, which we have effectively achieved. Now, you can play with semantics of whether you believe we are or are not in a recession. However, the economic outlook of our country, at least currently, is not positive. Although there is increase in job placement, consumer spending is definitely down. Consumer sentiment across all industries is negative, save for a couple, including oil. But that would also include the firearms industry. Now, with the raising prices in fuel, logistics, transportation, food, energy, or other living expenses, of course there is less discretionary income to go around, especially when it comes to non-necessity commodities like firearms. Furthermore, we just got out of a 2-year period where demand had skyrocketed and people were purchasing anything and everything they could find firearm or ammunition related, which has led, in my opinion, to a certain amount of consumer fatigue for firearms and related products. Now, this is echoed in point number 2 if you look at the recent earnings releases from Smith & Wesson and Ruger, the 2 largest publicly traded firearms manufacturers in the United States. Their outlooks were not very good for the most recent quarter. Ruger's revenues were down 30% and their gross margin was down 8%. And Smith & Wesson's revenues were down 44% and their gross margins were down 5% if you consider the same quarter from 2021. Now, in the earnings release phone call, Mr. Kalloy of Ruger made a brief statement which I think echoes the sentiment. He says, "The estimated sell-through of the company's products from the independent distributors to retailers decreased 31% in the first half of 2022 compared to the prior year period. For the same period, the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or NICS, background checks, as adjusted by the National Shooting Sports Foundation, decreased 17%. These decreases are attributable to decreased consumer demand for firearms from the unprecedented levels of the surge that began in 2020 and remained for most of 2021. The second quarter of 2021 had the highest quarterly distributor unit sell-through in the company's history, which led to a significant year-over-year decrease in distributor sell-through in the current quarter." So as mentioned, in 2020 to 2021, we saw an unprecedented level of demand. Pricing and demand for the products had surged to levels we had never seen before. That was seen in the NICS data. I had done videos at this time explaining what was going on in that current market situation. Now, as a comparison, demand has dropped, and he is saying the NICS data as a comparison or as a representation has dropped significantly, which has led them into a very distinct disadvantage in the current quarter compared to the same quarter of 2021 when demand was astronomical. So the statement echoes what I believe is an indicator that we have returned back to pre-pandemic levels of demand, and the market has really crashed down from its all-time highs that we experienced over the past 2 years. Now, this leads me into point number 3, as he mentioned, the NICS data. Now, if we look at the NICS data as a comparison from 2022 to 2021, even beginning in January, and I'm just going to round these numbers off. January 2021, there were 4.3 million NICS checks conducted. In the same month in 2022, 2.5. February of 21, 3.4 million. February of 22, 2.5 million. March of 21, 4.6 million. March of 22, 3.0 million. April 3.5 down to 2.7, May 3.2 down to 2.3, June 3.0 down to 2.5, and July, the most recent month, 2.8 down to 2.4. So there is a month-over-month decrease, and if you even compare those numbers up to 2019, this is pre-pandemic. Let's go to the most recent month, July. They were 2.0 in 2019, 2.4. This year, if we go to June, 2.3 in June of 19, up to 2.5. So slightly higher if we look 2019, which is pre-pandemic, to now, post-pandemic, but the numbers from 2019 to 2022 are much more similar than 2021 to 2022. Keep in mind, in 2019, this was also the tail end of what we knew as the Trump slump, when demand had significantly decreased from the previous President Obama era. So again, indicator number 3, that things have really crashed back down to normal demand levels. This leads me directly into point number 4. Now, we know that companies are seeing very serious declines in their sales and their margins. What do they start to do to start incentivizing people to purchase their products? And that is promotions. I don't know about you guys, but I haven't seen a lot of promotions over the past couple years, but over the past several months, I've seen a lot of promotions come from pretty much every major manufacturer and retailer. Now, unfortunately, because of YouTube policies, I cannot post these promotions up to show you or use them even as an example, but you can go search them. Just search any manufacturer's name followed by promotion after it, Springfield, Ruger, Smith & Wesson, whoever, and you can see the different product packages they are putting together and the sales and the rebates that they are offering. Also, we even have started offering promotions on our online retail space, so that is again a sign of the times. If the products cannot sell themselves on their own merit at their current price point, you have to offer sales to reinvigorate the consumer base, which is still out there willing to purchase firearms, but maybe not at a high price. Now, my 5th and final point will be lack of panic buying. I've discussed this in a couple recent videos I did yesterday and the day before when it comes to panic motivated purchasing. Now, I have been in the industry for about 8 years, and one thing that has always been certain, at least in the former years of my operations, is anytime there was a mass shooting or any type of political debate going on about gun control, one of the things we could always depend on as a retailer is that would drive a lot of business, because people were interested in purchasing the things that they were afraid were going to be banned. Now, we are not seeing that really at all right now. And we haven't this year, in spite of being in probably one of the most politically charged years when it comes to gun control debate. Now, there could be a couple reasons for that. Number one is people could just see that these sorts of legislation don't have as much teeth as they used to, and sort of the effect of the little boy who cried wolf, where you see these things pass through the government so often and nothing ever happens that you just start to stop worrying about it. Number 2 is because of the consumer fatigue effect that I had talked about. People have been purchasing and purchasing and purchasing. It may just be that everybody's already got 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 of everything that they're talking about banning already, and they don't need to go out and buy another. Or the third is the pricing has been so high that even with the motivation that fear, panic buying might otherwise spur, people don't have the money or the resources to go pay the inflated prices of the goods that are out there on the shelves. But the obvious absence of any type of panic-related buying is a clear indication to me that demand obviously has plummeted back down to normal levels, which I think is a good thing. I've never been a fan of panic-based buying. I always think people should buy the things that they need at the time that they need them, instead of purchasing things out of speculation of something that may happen, but that's just my opinion. Now, after discussing these 5 indicators as why I believe demand has totally crashed in the firearms industry, I know the number one question I'm going to get is, Chris, you're saying demand is gone and these sales and promotions are coming out, but I am noticing that the pricing of firearms and ammunition in my area has not really come down that much, or that noticeably, since the big spike we saw. They're not quite back down to 2019 levels. Why is that? Well, pricing is formed based on 2 factors. Number 1 is what is the cost to manufacture the good, and number 2 is what is the demand for the good. The cost, it is the logistics, the material, the personnel, the manufacturer space and equipment will set the baseline price. That is how much the company that makes it is spending to make that unit of that commodity. They cannot bring the price down below that, or it just makes sense that they don't make it at all, as they can't manufacture things and sell them at a loss. Now, unfortunately, since 2019, due to inflation, the price of a lot of this type of stuff has gone way up. Raw material, fuel, logistics, personnel, wages. So the cost of manufacturing this stuff is not nearly the same as it was in 2019, so you're not going to get this pricing back down. I think we're down to a floor of what is going to be the minimum margin companies are going to be willing to accept, and you cannot go below that without putting the company who makes it out of business. The second factor that sets the price is the demand. After you have your baseline price with a small margin built in there, the margin then fluctuates based on the demand for that good. There's fewer of them and more demand, the price goes up based on that demand. There's less demand and more items, the price comes down, but again, only down to the floor of a small margin over the cost of manufacturing that good, which is where I believe pricing is now and where it's going to stay until commodity pricing, or the cost of wages, the cost of fuel, the cost of logistics comes down as well. Then they will be able to bring down their manufacturing costs and bring down the price as well. But that's going to cause an overall an overall contraction in the market, which is currently what they're trying to do to quell inflation by raising the interest rates and other things like that. Well guys, that is all I have for you today on this. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out this video. If you enjoyed, please let me know by hitting the like button. Please also consider subscribing to my channel and hit that bell notification button so you are aware when I am posting new content. I'm going to leave you guys off with that. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV, and I will see you next time.